ज़ोरेन, हमारा जो है ना ट्रेडिशन ये है कि सेल्फ इंट्रोडक्शन सब करवाते हैं, तो यू कैन इंट्रोड्यूस योर सेल्फ एंड योर थीम एंड देन यू हैव 30 मिनट्स। उसके बाद फिर हम सब शरीक होंगे आपके साथ, ठीक है? तो थैंक यू वेरी
Done,
मच,
sir.
थैंक यू फॉर जॉइनिंग अस। ओवर टू यू।
Thank you. So I'm Zoran. My full name is Zorain Nizamani. I don't know why there's a Khan between my name. My parents put it there, but I just put Zorain Nizamani. I did my LLB from the External University of London program, Zabis se, and फिर मैं practice कर रहा था law कराची में. After 4 years of practicing, I went abroad to Boston, to the US, to the Northeastern University for my master's in criminal justice. मैंने criminal justice में master's किया वहाँ से, MSc. And then I worked in a police department as an intern for 6 to 8 months. Then I came back to Pakistan, practiced law, applied for a PhD in the same criminal justice field, and at the University of Arkansas at Little Rock. And now I'm here. So what I'll be doing or going on today is just basically is going to be a mix of different things that I think about all the time. Um, so we'll be starting from just talking about education in general and the importance of questioning. That's going to be the first, and then we'll move on to questioning and religious freedom in society. कि किस तरह आप सवालात कर सकते हो where your society is rather conventional, right? Then we'll move on to just inculcating analytical skills in a society. Moving on from questioning, we move on to just inculcating analytical skills within people. And then I'll move on to screen time, big problem. बहुत मसला है आजकल screen time का लोगों में. So screen time, then I'll move on to criticism in society, obviously, how much of space there is for people to criticize, respectfully, of course, in society. And then just philosophical thought in the end, and that's going to be it. So if in the middle you get bored, call me out. I don't mind. If you feel like this is getting too monotonous, scream at me. I can make it more interactive. So starting off with education and just questioning in general. Um, हमारे स्कूल सिस्टम्स अनफॉर्चुनेटली ऐसे हैं जो कि बहुत ज्यादा आई कॉल देम they're just they're just taking kids together and feeding them one uniform thing. And once you keep feeding them one uniform thing, आपको आखिर में एक robot ही मिलता है. So our education system unfortunately has not evolved with time. That has been a problem. Um, and because the education system has not evolved, there has been this lack of questioning. You know, हमें सिखाया जाता है दराज हम आगे बिठाया जाता है स्कूलों में कि जी आपने सवाल नहीं पूछना बस यही है and you have to just ratify it, you know. So that's something I was thinking of for a long time, and I had that thought. That is why I wrote it down as well. Corporal punishment is another problem. For the longest time, I was a advocate of corporal punishment. मैं अमेरिका आया मैंने कहा ये तो बेवकूफ है मार नहीं खाते तभी तो इंसान के बच्चे नहीं बनते लेकिन then I saw you know it doesn't really do a corporal punishment doesn't really do any better. It does worse because आप ट्रॉमा इनकलकेट कर रहे हो ट्रॉमा दे रहे हो बच्चों को जिनसे उन बेचारों को आगे जाके पढ़ाई से तो दूर वो क्रिटिकल थिंकिंग से भी दूर हो जाते हैं बिकॉज दे थिंक if we try to put forward a new idea we are going to be so to say shut down and हमारे सारे स्कूलों का यही मसला है unfortunately it's sad to see from schools universities colleges it is आपने हिटलर बिठाया हुआ है सामने वो हिटलर कहता है भाई जो मैं कहता हूँ वो लिखो नहीं तो मैं फेल कर दूंगा सेमेस्टर रिपीट करोगे और फीस भरोगे so that is a big problem in our education system there is when I came here there was a cultural shock शायद साहब कह रहे थे क्या कल्चरल शॉक था वो यही था कि यहाँ पे वो कहते हैं जी आपको क्या इंटरेस्ट है वो बताओ वो पढ़ेंगे we are the instructor, we are not a professor, we are an instructor. We'll tell you where the resources are when it comes to whatever you want to study, and we'll guide you towards those resources. And the school obviously is going to make sure you have access to those resources. So that was something that I was kind of surprised when I saw. I was like, ये क्या हो रहा है भाई ये तो वही पढ़ा रहे हैं मुझे पढ़ना है. This is I'm not used to this. I'm only used to what जो किताब में लिखा हुआ होता है टेक्स्ट बुक में लिखा हुआ होता है. So that was kind of surprising to me. So education, of course, is where the root cause the problem is at the root. And I have this really cool quote by Einstein. Einstein said, the important thing is to not stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existence. One cannot help but be in awe when he contemplates the mysteries of eternity, of life, of the marvelous structure of reality. What this means, in a sense, is curiosity. You know, you're supposed to be curious about things, learn about things. आप सोचो उन चीजों के बारे में. And then you should have this this space where you can go and ask questions, you know. Um, question is on for questioning again for the thousandth time is a board in society. हमें कहा गया है बस चुप करके जो रटा रहे हैं वही रटो, नहीं तो फेल हो जाओगे। एंड आप वही मैकेनिकल एक बंदा बना रहे हो जो कि आपकी वर्क फोर्स में लेबर में तो ऐड होगा, 9 to 5 करेगा, ही डू द 9 to 5 जॉब फॉर यू, बट he's not really going to add any value to your society. He's not going to be a free thinker, so to say. The word that we use is the word, term we use is free thinker, right? So we need to really emancipate ourselves from this structural education. And I think people say, okay, what is the solution? I would say homeschooling is part of the solution, but not the only solution. Because primary socialization आपको school में मिलती है बच्चे को, जब बच्चा बड़ा होता है, he needs to interact with other human beings, you know, to kind of learn about things, be it sports, be it उठना बैठना किस तरह है. Obviously, education starts from home, but primary socialization when it comes to home education suffers. So I feel like homeschooling isn't really the solution, but what the solution is probably a mix of both schooling as well as homeschooling. A lot of things I read in books now, I've never been taught in school or in college or in university. Even today in my university that I'm at right now, there's a lot of things that I'm not taught, and I'm like, okay, I need to go out and grasp these things myself. So, question, okay, question everything. That is what I believe in. And when I say question, I also say question your beliefs. That is the second pointer that we now have to talk about. That's education and questioning and religion. So not education, just questioning and religion. So जब मैं कह रहा हूँ आप सवाल करो हर चीज का, आप पूछो ये चीज ऐसी क्यों है? That also includes you need to start questioning about your own beliefs, right? Um, I read somewhere that you are born in a religion that you did not really decide on on being born in. You're given a name that you didn't really decide that, okay, this is going to be my name, and you're born in a country where you're like, okay, I don't want to be a part of this, but you end up defending all three of those things despite never having a say in any of those things. So we're born in a religion and we spend our entire lives defending that religion, which is fine, you know, it's completely fine. आपका जब तक you have your own belief, that is fine, that is faith. And that is the understanding we have between faith and belief, right? Faith does not really need reason, it just needs this abstract outlook towards things. Belief on the other things is where you Richard Dawkins keeps going on about evidence and evidence, saying tell me what the evidence is of God. That's a different story. My idea is कि आप अपने भी belief को question करो। अगर आपका मतलब आपको कहते हैं कि आपने लोगों से अच्छा होना है, why? What is the reason behind that? You have to pray a certain times of day. Okay, why do you have to pray a certain times of day? Um, a lot of people that I know are like, we pray because it inculcates discipline within us. Okay, so does sports. आप फुटबॉल खेलोगे उससे भी discipline आएगा, आप जिम जाओगे उससे भी discipline आएगा. Why only prayer? So these are questions that you have to ask, and that is supposed to be completely fine. Unfortunately, in our conventional households, you cannot ask these questions because if you do, you're going to be in trouble, unfortunately. So वो सवालात जब आप नहीं पूछेंगे, when was the last time any one of us got up and asked कि मैं घर पे क्यों नहीं, why can I not pray at home, why should I go and pray in a mosque, what is the difference? I know the sawab level is different, but you need to ask these questions, right? I'm fasting, why am I fasting? What will happen if I don't fast? Okay, you know engage in this debate. And I feel like parents play a huge part in this, and I'll get to that later. But unfortunately, our parents also, they don't know any better. They're also still learning from things. They're also new to this world. हम बहुत दफा मैं अपनी माँ से कहता हूँ, अम्मा आपको क्यों नहीं पता है? But मेरी माँ, then I realized मेरी माँ खुद, she's trying to figure things out. No one taught her anything. As parents, I'm sure some of you are parents as well. You were not never taught anything. You're still figuring things out. So our parents even don't know, unfortunately. And the next person we go to, and this might get a little controversial, but I'll try to tread as carefully as I can. When we have questions, we don't have the आदत कि हम जाके किताब खुद ही पढ़ें और उसमें से सवाल निकाल लें, be it a religious किताब or a non-religious किताब. We go to a certain cleric or we go to a certain person who might have more knowledge. Unfortunately, they do not have enough knowledge as well, but they have confidence to give wrong knowledge, and that is what they do. They give us wrong pieces of knowledge, and we live our entire life not questioning that, because if you do, you'll be lynched to death, unfortunately. That is how questioning religious beliefs works in our society. मैंने अपने माँ बाप से कहा था, and I might get into trouble for this, but I said, listen, they're too busy earning and हमें पेट पालने में इतना busy हैं कि they never had the time to read all of these things and answer our questions. मैंने कहा भाई तुम लोग भी religious organization खोल लेते, NGO खोल लेते, तुम लोग भी tax wave होते, मजे से जिंदगी जीते, but that's I didn't say that. In the end, for this part only, I'll quote Nietzsche. He's Friedrich Nietzsche, one of my favorite philosophers. I'm reading his book called The Will to Power currently, and he says in his other book, Esche Homo, he says, um, after coming into contact with a religious man, I always feel I must wash my hands. What does this mean? This doesn't mean that religion itself is bad. It doesn't mean that I'm meeting someone religious, तो वो बंदा ही बुरा है. It just means when you start blindly following to the point of radicalization, that is where the problem is. You need to strike a balance in life where you should be moderated in your beliefs. Your beliefs should be where I always say कि अगर आपका belief is making you more hateful towards other people और आप में बहुत ज्यादा hatred और नफरत पैदा कर रहा है आपका मजहब, तो then you really need to start reevaluating things because um, if you can start hating people, you can go as far as killing people in the name of religion. And that is the last thing we want to do. So always make sure whatever you're doing, make sure you evaluate what the reason behind it is. आप क्यों वो चीज कर रहे हो? And then maybe see if you're born in the right religion or not. So that's that. Moving on to the third point, which is reading, writing, and inculcating analytical skills. So this is something I think everyone has gone on, written books on this. And all I'm going to say about this is I taught in Ziauddin University. I was teaching law there. And this is what I taught my students. I said, you don't have to learn every single thing that I tell you. You have to question me as well. You have to make me question myself. मैं जो चीज कह रहा हूँ वो सही है कि नहीं है. I am not a professor. I'm an instructor. I'm a human being. I will make mistakes. It is your job to rectify me. There is no problem doing that. But again, as I said in the start, हमारे स्कूलों में, कॉलेजेस में, यूनिवर्सिटीज में हिटलर बैठे हुए हैं जो कहते हैं आपने अगर सवाल किया तो फिर सेमेस्टर बैक होगा and you'll just end up paying the whole fees again just for questioning. So I think free will and motive play a huge part in all of these things. We should have the free will as students to question whatever we're learning, to dig deep into those things, right? एक बात से दूसरी बात निकलती है. And I've always been a proponent of the fact कि आप जो भी पढ़ो उसको आप जिंदगी में उसमें अमल करो. अमल करने के बाद आप देखो कि क्या ये चीज से कुछ अच्छा हो रहा है कि नहीं हो रहा है. दिस इज एनालिटिकल थिंकिंग, राइट? you're analyzing whatever you're reading and then applying in life. This goes for both religion, this goes for anything you're studying, this goes for law, psychology, what have you, doctor, जो भी आप पढ़ रहे हो, जो भी आप कर रहे हो. So I think this is very important that we need to inculcate analytical and critical skills in our students. सवालात हम उठा उठा के उनके मुंह पे मार देते हैं. बच्चों को आज तक हमने ये नहीं सिखाया कि सवाल को तोड़ना किस तरह है. सवाल को 1000 दफा पढ़ो, उसमें समझो कि वो क्या पूछना चाह रहा है. व्हाट वी डू इज हमने उनको रटाया है कि जी ये सवाल आएगा एग्जाम में, इसका ये जवाब है, छाप दो. छाप दोगे, पास हो जाओगे, दूसरी क्लास में जाओगे. दैट इज हाउ आवर एजुकेशन सिस्टम अनफॉर्चुनेटली it works. So I think it is very important for us to inculcate these skills in our students, and this is the only way we will actually progress as a country in itself. I was in the Library of Congress the other day. So the first time I went to the Library of Congress in Washington D.C. was in 2014, I think. और उधर दीवार पे एक चीज, जो व्हाइट हाउस के साथ एक लाइब्रेरी है वहाँ पे, इट्स ओपन टू पब्लिक. उधर लिखा हुआ था दीवार पे, it said reading makes a full man, conference a ready man, and writing an exact man. I'll read it again. It said reading makes a full man, conference a ready man, and writing an exact man. So back then I was like, yeah, whatever. Didn't really make sense. But I went again to the Library of Congress probably 3 months ago in Washington, D.C. And I read that thing again and it made more sense. I was like, okay, now I know what it means. It means कि जब आप पढ़ रहे हो, you have the knowledge. And then when you're engaging in debate, conferencing, you're engaging in debate, you're making a ready man. That means you are debating your ideas, you're engaging in this intellectual discourse, and then writing an exact man. Once you've done debating, you write your ideas down. Once you write your ideas down, you have this mental clarity where you know exactly what you studied, how you studied it, and what it meant. For us, unfortunately, we don't even get past the first stage, which is reading, right? Because we don't even read, as sad as that is. Um, and that brings me to screen time, right? हम बहुत दफा चीजें इंटरनेट पे पढ़ते हैं, but there's such a tsunami of information that you read one piece of information, you scroll down, you read another piece of information, and that piece of information that you just read is gone somewhere. So screen time has really ruined things for us. We need to sit down, read a book, reflect, write down whatever we've learned from the book. शायद साहब कह रहे थे अभी कि किताब का कोई review करना है. And that is something that we need to do more of. It might sound very childish, so to say, कि you're reviewing a book. But when you sit down, read and write, it makes all the difference in the world. At least it did for me. मैं fail student था अपनी school में with C's and D's for the longest time. But once I started moving on, I started reading myself, I started writing myself, and I understood there's more to life than just ratifying things. You're supposed to read and then write and understand what you've learned. So AI really has it's done wonders as well, but it's done more harm. Personally, I think it's done more harm than good. And again, most of you are parents here. It is not my place to say, but I'll give you some unsolicited advice. The advice is keep your kids away from screens, give them books. The last thing you want is your kid. I know a kid, she's 3 years old. That kid is, it's easy, she's 3 years, but what she does is she knows how to use a phone. And I'm like, listen, you're 3 years old. How do you know these things? And she knows exactly how to go to YouTube, turn on a baby shark video and watch the entire damn thing. And I'm like, listen, you should be reading books, not doing this. So anyway, moving on. Shahid Saab, how much time do I have? Do I have another 10 minutes, I think?
हाँ हाँ, आप कर लें कंप्लीट. हाँ, हम लेट
ठीक
चलो.
है. And then I'm just gonna move on. I don't want to bore anyone, honestly. If anyone gets bored, please tell me.
नहीं नहीं,
I
आप कर
can do
लें.
this all day. And then moving on, it's where was I? Yeah, I was at reading and screen time. So I'm done with that. Screen time, get away from screen, start reading, go out and touch grass, it's going to be helpful. You're going to start thinking differently. Moving on. Why aren't we reading? Again, I think instant gratification, biggest problem in our society, everywhere around the world. Instant gratification. This damn thing has made things worse for us because now we're just doom scrolling. There's a term that I learned the other day. It's called doom scrolling, where you scroll until you're doomed, so to say, and then you go to sleep. Um, when you project this onto students, अगर एक स्टूडेंट है उसको आपने कुछ सिखाया ही नहीं है और आप उसको फिर एक एग्जाम दे रहे हो और फिर जब आपने उसको कुछ सिखाया नहीं है आप उसको एक एग्जाम दे रहे हो when that child sits down to write that exam, because he's never been taught at the level that you're asking him a question at, he will of course use AI, right? You can't blame the student when they use AI. But again, as an instructor, it is my duty to make sure the student knows exactly how to use AI. Copy paste, Shopify, seen it happen, right? But everything has its uses and abuses. It is for us to teach students how to use AI responsibly. I use AI. My PhD program, I a lot of the times I need information. I jump onto AI and get information. But I will then make sure I go ahead and verify that information. I have a source for whatever that piece of information is. So for us, we need to really understand that we need to teach students and teach not even students, just our friends, family, everyone, कि AI का इस्तेमाल किस तरह करना है. Because instant gratification, आप, be it reels on Instagram or be it your assignment being done really quickly, all of this is just getting your job done. It's giving you that dopamine rush. We're slaves to dopamine, unfortunately. So screen time when it comes to AI has to really, really, we got to protect our kids with this. We have to make sure our students know exactly how to use AI. Um, and then moving on to the last part, that is respectful criticism. I'll go to the philosophical thought, which is right at the end, but I'll jump on to allowing space for respectful criticism in society. And there's this really cool quotation that I'm going to share with you guys. It's by Kevin Strom. He says, to determine the true rulers of society, you must ask yourself, who is that I'm not allowed to criticize? If you really need to know कि आप पे कौन रूल कर रहा है, सी आप किसको criticize नहीं कर सकते. If there is a certain person that you cannot criticize, that means that is the real person that is really ruling you. So, um, again, we all know how things work in our country. We are not a democracy, we're a theocracy, where religion plays a bigger role in our society. And that theocracy is then, that talent is further exasperated by certain people that we all know. If I take names, I'm not in trouble. I'm here. You guys are in trouble, so I will not take names. But that is just how society works. You know, criticism is very important in society. What I'm trying to get to is, जब तक आप डिबेट नहीं करोगे, किसी को क्रिटिसाइज नहीं करोगे, how will you understand that there is space for improvement? When I
Hmm.
was teaching, I always told my students, I was like, listen, you need to tell me what I'm doing wrong. If I'm doing something wrong, we need to come tell me because I can improve. Every human being has capacity to improve. We're all learning. We will learn for the rest of our lives. So it is incumbent upon everyone to engage in debate, which is respectfully, where there is respectful criticism, there is constructive criticism. So I say I wrote an article where I said in parliaments around the world there is debate on bills. There is debate on things. There is debate on a piece of legislation that is going to become a piece of legislation. Right now, it is just a bill. In our parliaments, we saw how the amendment was done, right? I said after that amendment, you name this the Wax Museum. You know, the Madame Tussauds in the UK is a wax museum, right? Where there's all wax museum. मैंने कहा parliament का नाम ये रख दो because you need to understand that you need to engage in criticism. You need to have that space जहाँ पे आप किसी को बोल सको नहीं यार तुम्हारा personal कुछ नहीं है तुम्हारा idea गलत है. Your idea has a space where it can improve. So uh, power structures, unfortunately, the we have power structures, they're not really open to criticism, right? And now they even have immunity, which makes things even better. Um, I think that's life in denial. I think you should be. I'm not going to go towards that. That's just very political. But the idea is कि जब तक आपको पता ही नहीं आपने गलत क्या किया है, you cannot improve, right? तो आपको पता होना चाहिए आपने गलत क्या किया और जब तक आपको कोई बताएगा नहीं, आप अपने आप को इम्प्रूव नहीं करोगे और आपको बताने के लिए किसी में हिम्मत होनी चाहिए इतनी कि वो आपको बताए कि आप ये गलत कि भाई you're doing wrong. You really need to amend your ways. Um, in the end, I'm just going to quote Machiavelli. Machiavelli wrote, Niccolo Machiavelli was an Italian philosopher. He wrote a book called The Prince. And The Prince is said to be a blueprint when you go to war. It gives you these tactics for war. And it's not physical war, it's also the diplomatic war. So he says, um, people should either be caressed or crushed. If you do them minor damage, they will get their revenge. But if you cripple them, that there is nothing that they can do, if you need to injure someone, do it in such a way that you do not have to fear their vengeance. कि आप किसी को जब नुकसान पहुंचाओ आप उसको cripple कर दो like make sure you absolutely handicap them because if you leave even some space for them to return and you've done them wrong they're going to come back and do things worse to you because आपने किसी के साथ ज्यादती की और जब किसी के साथ ज्यादती करोगे it is going to come back to you. So I think that's, yeah. And then I have some numbers right at the end. I'm not going to bore you with numbers. I'm doing statistical analysis these days. It is terrible. So I won't bore you with numbers. But what I'm going to tell you, what I'm going to leave you at is that being a lawyer, our judicial system, I think is 136 out of 140 in the world. जो rule of law index है. Our conviction rate, I think, is 3%.
Hmm.
So everyone being tried in court, only 3% of the probability, only 3% of them are being convicted. If I was a judge's son, I would have gotten away with something. I'm not, right? So I cannot. But people in power are going to get away with things. And this is going to happen. This has always happened in society, in societies which have not stood up for their rights. And this is going to keep happening unless someone stands up and says, this is enough. Everyone is supposed to be equal in the eyes of law, and that is not going to happen unless there is a revolution. But revolution is difficult when you have people ending up at coffee shops because that is all they do all day, end up in coffee shops, put it up on Instagram, and call it a day. So I'm going to leave you to that you really need to start thinking about how things are going to improve, and the only way they will improve is intellectual discourse and debate. That's all I that's all I have for you. That's going to be it. Questions? So Yasin says how to consume book whenever you're reading. Like whenever I read first page, totally understood, but turning on the next page, I just forget everything. Yasin, that's fine. You're not a machine that is going to ratify everything. It is going to stay there in your brain. जब तक तुम समझ के पढ़ रहे हो, it's going to stay there in your brain. A month later, whenever someone talks about it, it's going to click कि मैंने ये पढ़ा हुआ है. You don't really need to understand, and you need to understand, but you don't expect कि तुम हर चीज याद रखोगे. मैंने 2 करोड़ पेज पढ़े, मुझे उसमें से 10 याद होंगे probably. So don't worry about that. Saban, also one of my other students, says, totally agree with you, Yasin, and also reading a book is the most irritating and annoying thing. I agree. Reading a book is very annoying and it's terribly boring. I'm terrified of reading a book when it's not my interest. I'll tell you that. When it's not your interest, whatever you're reading, it gets boring. If you're reading about serial killers and all of that stuff, super interesting. But if you're reading stuff like AI, you want to read a book on AI, I wouldn't. So obviously that's going to get boring. So I hope that answers it.
जी मारिया, और फिर माहिदा। जी मारिया। मारिया डिस्कनेक्ट हो गई
Assalamu
लगता है।
alaikum.
जी जी मारिया।
Assalamu
Assalamu alaikum. Actually, I'm a student of law, so I have like a lot of questions related to law. Like, I'm not going to bore all of them, but I would love to ask. But khair, I'll keep that to aside. And so you talked about like discourse and criticizing, and as much as that is important, I totally believe that, like, because it will always outlive indoctrination. But I kind of what I've noticed. Criticizing has kind of become a way to seem intellectual, and I've seen like a lot of people who would criticize everything just for the sake of it. गवर्नमेंट है तो आपने ज़रूरी क्रिटिसाइज करना है, कोई अच्छा काम कर ले उसको कोई वो करता नहीं है. एंड आई काइंड ऑफ फील कि वो क्रिएट्स फॉस्टर्स लाइक अ इन्वायरमेंट ऑफ डिस्पोंडेंसी. तो आपको लगता नहीं है कि कहीं पे वो एक्चुअल जो पर्पस होता है वो कहीं पे फुलफिल नहीं होता when we do that?
alaikum. Maria, you're right. First of all, congratulations on being a law student. That is, you've done yourself a favor. And I don't mean that sarcastically, I mean that in a good way. Coming to your question, there's two kinds of criticisms. One is, as you said, कि, if you're doing it for the sake of criticizing, right? And then there's another sort. It's called constructive criticism, right? Where you are giving feedback, but you're not really agreeing with someone's ideas. And I feel like the latter is obviously supposed to be entertained. The former is say, yeah, everyone has a right to voice their opinion. As bad as it is, they still have an opinion, right? Even if it stinks, it's still an opinion. So criticism, say hello, I understand what you mean, and especially within certain societies in our society as well. I won't generalize and say all Desi societies, but I would say definitely हर जगह होता है कि just for the sake of argument आप कहते हो यार कितनी बेवकूफी की बात की इस बंदे ने. Um, I think I read somewhere, and I'm trying to make sure that I say this correctly. I said fools say when they have to say something, and smart people talk when they have to. There's something along those lines. That means sometimes you just have to talk because you want to talk, and then sometimes you really need to say something. So make sure you make that distinction. And in the end, all I'll say is to your question in conclusion is कि आपके पास रैशनल वजह होनी चाहिए फॉर व्हाटएवर यू क्रिटिसाइजिंग. अगर आपके पास रैशनल वजह बेसिस नहीं है, keep your opinion to yourself. But if you have a reason which is doused in rationale, I say put it forward. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you. And
Yeah,
about the
thank
law
you.
questions, is there any way I can ask them?
मारिया, मारिया,
It's
मैं आपकी तरफ आऊंगा वापस, जरा बाकी एक राउंड ले लें
Yeah.
क्वेश्चंस का, फिर आपको अपॉर्चुनिटी देंगे.
Okay. Thank you.
जी माहिदा.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamualaikum,
Thank you,
Aida. How
Zoe,
are
for
you?
this amazing session. I'm good. How are you?
Good, thanks.
So I have two parts of the question. The first one is a statement, not a question, and the second part is a legitimate question, which I'm always concerned about. So the first part is where you said it's 100% true. I did my A levels from Pakistan. So until I was here, I was like, Pakistani teachers are the best teachers in the world. They teach you everything to the core. कोई concept की confusion रहती नहीं. And then I went to University of Birmingham for my undergrad and masters. And when I landed there, मेरे दिमाग में यही था ये क्या teachers हैं, पढ़ाते हैं नहीं, they just guide you a certain way and then they don't teach you anything. At a point I was doubting in खुद भी आता है या नहीं, otherwise they would share the information with me. But towards the end of the fourth year, I really realized like how I've changed the way I think and how many more questions I actually have being with those teachers. So that's 200% agreed to. And for the second part, maybe you can answer them together. My real question is that I understand increased screen time or AI dependency has made us very, very, how do I say it? Like we've lost many abilities of how our brain functions in terms of memory, in terms of many a things. I'm so sorry, I'll cut it short, but just a small incident to mention. I had my grandmother who was just used to look outside and tell me कि दिन का ये time हो रहा होगा because सूरज यहाँ पर है. That's the power with how much their brain operated. And now I cannot even keep a track of my day without looking at the calendar on my phone, which is AI supported 200%. But with this, if I wish to cut it down, I'm afraid that this is such a tech-driven world, or even for younger kids, if I am not giving them enough exposure to this, they may lack a certain skill and they may miss many opportunities. So how do we find the striking balance between two कि मैं AI से अपने ब्रेन कैपेबिलिटीज को जाया भी नहीं होने दूं और मैं इन दिस टेक ड्रिवन वर्ल्ड एडजस्ट भी कर जाऊं विदाउट लूजिंग ऑन अपॉर्चुनिटीज बिकॉज आई डोंट नो हाउ टू ऑपरेट these tools.
No, Madha, that's legitimate. I think that's a very legitimate concern. Coming to the first question, I feel like um, teachers, as you said, teachers, when you were in Pakistan, you thought they were the best teachers. And then you moved abroad, you studied there. And that is what exposure does to you, right? You understand that there's a different world out there. You were in this little bubble, and then you step out, you're like, shit, this is not what I thought it would be, right? Um, I'll give a caveat there. I'm from Habib Public School, right? Habib Public is a semi-government school. मेरे टीचर्स को probably महीने के 35,000 रुपए मिलते थे, 40,000 रुपए at max. And at that pay scale, they were still showing up every day at 8:30 a.m. And my school used to get off at 3:30 p.m. So I'm going to give kudos to them कि उन्होंने अपनी अपनी जो नौकरी है वो बहुत दिल से की. उन्होंने जो पढ़ाया मुझे वो बहुत दिल से पढ़ाया. So I don't expect every teacher to be like that, but I expect our institutions to pay our academics really well enough कि उनके लिए minimum wage तो आप दो उनको. अब मेरे टीचर्स बेचारे बसों में आते थे आई एम प्राउड टू से इट. वो बेचारे बसेस में आते थे, मुझे पढ़ाते. हम सब 30-35 स्टूडेंट्स की क्लास को पढ़ाते थे. वो ऑल बॉयज, व्हिच इज इवन वर्स. एंड दे डिड इट विद ऑल देयर हार्ट. That being said, when I was in A levels, I did my A levels from Nixon College, right? I had teachers who were being paid probably insane, embarrassing amounts of money, and they were not doing the same job, and they were not doing it as good as my other teachers were. So I think it really depends on teacher to teacher. I've had teachers who've changed my life. I've had teachers who've made my life worse. So I agree with you. So I hope that answers your first part. That obviously teachers, it's a different. There's all sorts of instructors out there. Coming to the second part, which is how do you keep up with AI? You want to make sure you don't lose touch with what everyone's doing. You want to make sure you're in that hip setup, right? I would say I'm still. If I have a question, I still walk into a library, and not an e-library, but a real library with books, and I just go out and start reading and seeing मुझे इस किताब में से मेरा सवाल का जवाब मिलेगा या नहीं मिलेगा. And 9 times out of 10, you do find the answer. Now, how much time does it take? It probably, if I had used AI, it would have happened probably in 5 minutes. But because I went into a library, I started opening up books, it probably took me 5 hours. But that 5 hours, I did not only learn what I wanted to learn, I learned even more. सो आई से आप हमेशा किताब खोल के पढ़ो. किताब से ज्यादा अच्छी सोर्स कोई नहीं होती. मैं पीएचडी कर रहा हूँ, मेरी जिंदगी मुश्किल हो गई है बिकॉज सब लोग ई सोर्सेस पढ़ते हैं, वो ई आर्टिकल्स पढ़ते हैं, वो ई बुक्स पढ़ते हैं. मैं कहता हूँ भाई मुझे किताब दे दो या मुझे प्रिंट करके दे दो, बट उससे दरख्त खराब होते हैं तो वो प्रिंट नहीं कर सकते. सो इट्स ऑल ई, एवरीथिंग इज इलेक्ट्रॉनिक नाउ. So that is definitely a problem. I think it is important for you to strike a balance. If you can afford going to a library, buying a book, or both, do both. I'm going to quote quickly before we move on to the next question. I'm just going to quote this old amazing person that I really loved. Everyone thought he was a meme. I really loved him. Allama Zamir Akhtar Naqvi. He passed away. Zamir Akhtar Naqvi साहब used to quote books. वो कहते थे यार किसी को कोई सवाल है मुझसे, किताब मेरी मेरी लाइब्रेरी में हो, मेरे पास उसके बारे में कोई किताब होगी, मैं किताब से जवाब दूंगा. एंड इंटरेस्टिंगली इनफ हमने अपने हीरोज को कभी रिस्पेक्ट नहीं किया. जमीर अख्तर साहब का अब जमीर कॉर्नर्स है लाइब्रेरी ऑफ कांग्रेस में वॉशिंगटन डीसी में. नो वन नोज दिस. अ लॉट वेरी फ्यू पीपल नो दिस. आप वॉशिंगटन डीसी में जाएं, हमने तो उन पे रील्स बना बना के का बेचारों का नाम इतना खराब किया. बट वॉशिंगटन डीसी में देयर इज अ सेपरेट कॉर्नर कॉल्ड जमीर कॉर्नर्स वेयर उनकी किताबें रखी हुई हैं जो उन्होंने ट्रांसलेट की थी और लिखी थी. तो आई फील लाइक द रोमांस विद बुक्स इज स्टिल देयर. AI is there obviously, but you need to strike a balance. I hope Maida that answers your concern.
जी अब्बास. अब्बास करीम.
Assalamu alaikum, sir. Am I audible?
जी जी.
Yes, sir.
First of all, forgive me if you hear any kind of noise because at this time I'm outside. I was attending one of my friends. So then I had to attend this session also here outside. First of all, Zorain, thank you so much for such a wonderful, wonderful talk.
Thank you, boss.
My question is rather, I would say, an expression of a frustration that I want to share, and I would obviously love to hear your perspective about this. So,
We're all
in
frustrated, man. Go ahead.
at the start of your talk, you basically mentioned that there's some basic and fundamental questions that we have to ask in order to be analytical, and I absolutely agree that. For me personally, it obviously is important because I've given a proper thought to it. That the relevance of questions like what is the importance of religious practices and why this religious practices is catered in this way and all kind of things. But to disseminate the importance and significance of the same discourse, the same kind of questioning to your peers seems not only alienating, but I kind of feel guilty as well, because in Pakistan, where the majority of people, they struggle with basic necessities, to invite them to this kind of discussion seems a bit difficult, because you feel that it's not only like sort of far away from the reality, but at the same time, it's also pressurizing them with more and more burden. So, although I don't feel that this kind of discourse or line of questioning is a cliche, which most of the people believe, but I am kind of frustrated, or I don't know how to basically disseminate it to my fellows, to people, those who are younger than me, how to find relevance and utility in this kind of discussion or discourse or line of questioning. Thank you.
Thank you, boss. I would say change your peers, man. Change your friends. If they cannot engage in intellectual discourse, you need new friends, man. So jokes apart, I say if someone cannot really hold up a conversation when it comes to intellectual conversations or just questioning one's beliefs, I say change your friends, man. You need new friends. So that's one aspect of it. And then the second is, listen, you said you don't want to, because people don't have basic necessities, you don't really want to burden them with more pressure and burdens, right? What is life without burden and pressure, man? You learn things under pressure. You learn things under burden, right? Burden, and I say if you put through a test, you learn things. So if they cannot hold up a conversation, man, and if you think that you're kind of pressurizing them, I think it's time to look the other side and maybe engage in debate with someone who wants to have a debate, right? And I don't say कि लड़ो जाके debate. I say just put forward ideas and see what the other person thinks about them. As for and yeah, so I was gonna say with debate is, and especially with not putting people under pressure, you are under constant pressure even when you're believing in a certain god. And I'm not taking this towards religion. All I'm saying is we're always under pressure. We're always under stress, under this tedious amounts of stress where your brain is always making decisions either right and wrong. So, and it's all about reward and punishment, man. It's all about reward and punishment. That is how I can sum up a lot of things in life, including religion. There's only two sides: there's good or bad, necessary and evil, reward and punishment. So if you feel like you have a lot of ideas and you don't have anyone to talk to them about, write them down. If you feel like you live amongst a society or a community that is not really open to different ideas, write them down. Write them down. See if once you write down, there's a lot of clarity that comes. So maybe you can share them with me. I don't mind. Email them to me. Um, but yeah, change your friends. I hope that answers it.
जी कोई और सवाल किसी का, वरना फिर मारिया को कहते हैं कि वो जो लॉ स्टूडेंट है और वो पूछना चाह रही हैं सेकंड राउंड में। जी मारिया।
Come on, people, give me questions. Guys, I'm here for questions.
जी मारिया।
वो क्वेश्चन बिल्कुल लॉ से ही रिलेटेड है, और मैं ये नहीं कह रही थी कि मैं अभी पूछ लूँ, लेकिन अगर वक्त है तो आई कैन आस्क देम
हाँ
राइट
नहीं
नाउ।
नहीं, अब अभी वो फर्स्ट राउंड कंप्लीट हो गया, किसी और ने नहीं पूछा तो आप पूछ लें।
ओके, सो मेरा क्वेश्चन एक तो फॉरेन जजमेंट्स के हवाले से था। जैसे अगर कोई फॉरेन कोर्ट कोई जजमेंट देती है किसी भी मैटर में, सो इज दैट बाइंडिंग ऑन आवर लाइक डोमेस्टिक कोर्ट्स?
Maria, so foreign judgments are not binding; they're persuasive precedent. That
ओके।
means if you have a case and you find a judgment which has similar facts and it is in your favor, but it is the High Court of Bombay, for example, or the UK. They're always persuasive precedent, but they're not binding precedent. So you can take that as a precedent जो आप use करके judge को persuade कर सकते हो कि इस case में भी यही हुआ था, although this is a different jurisdiction, but the facts are similar. If the facts are similar, the judgment is in your favor. It can always be used as persuasive precedent. I've done that 1,000 times, but it is not binding. For a binding precedent, you need a judgment of the same court or higher, or the same court more than one judge, or then higher of a higher court or Supreme Court, but not it's not binding.
ओके, थैंक यू। असल में दिस
Was
वो मैंने आई आस्क दिस क्वेश्चन इन द कॉन्टेक्स्ट ऑफ कस्टडी। सो बेसिकली द
right.
या सो एक्चुअली दिस होल प्रॉब्लम एंड देयर आर ऑब्वियसली लाइक अ लॉट ऑफ लीगल क्वेश्चंस इन दैट। So what scenario is like, so there's this couple, they like get separated, the mother goes abroad and takes the child, और अग्रीमेंट फादर के साथ ऐसी होती है कि दिस इज गोइंग टू बी टेम्पररी। वहाँ जाके शी फाइल्स लाइक पिटिशन फॉर खुला, शी टेक्स खुला, एंड देन शी ऑल्सो लाइक स्टार्ट लिविंग देयर, वो वापस नहीं आती है। और फिर वहाँ पे कोर्ट में वो कहती है कि लाइक दिस किड हैज़ लाइक ऑटिज्म, तो फॉर फॉर मेडिकल पर्पसेस वो उसको चाहती है कि वो रीलोकेट हो जाए इन कनाडा। तो वो वहाँ पे रीलोकेट होती है, और फिर वो वापस फिर वो जो वहाँ पे जो कोर्ट होता है वो एक जजमेंट दे, मतलब जजमेंट नहीं देती बट लाइक ऑर्डर दे देती है कि लाइक ये अब यहाँ पे रहेंगे, वो डॉक्यूमेंट्स के लिए बेसिकली। तो फिर जब उसके फादर को पता चलता है, सो दे फाइल अ पिटिशन इन डिस्ट्रिक्ट कोर्ट्स, और फिर डिस्ट्रिक्ट कोर्ट्स उनको कहते हैं कि आप वापस आएं। सो उस तरह से मतलब यहाँ पे ओरिजिनल जुरिस्डिक्शन तो ऑब्वियसली फिर पाकिस्तान में डिस्ट्रिक्ट कोर्ट के पास ही होगी ना, नॉट द फॉरेन कोर्ट, राइट?
Right, Maria. So for legal advice, मैं पैसे लेता हूँ. मैं आपको account number भी. I'm just kidding. With देखो, international with child custody matters, there is this piece of legislation which is called the International Child Protection. I think it's the Child Protection Convention, Geneva Convention. I think उसमें child rights हैं. That does apply. That is caveat to that. That does apply. I've had a couple of cases where the child custody is legislated by the Geneva Convention में कोई child custody के rights हैं. There's uh, a couple of factors that go into it though. If the child is a daughter and she has not reached the age of Hazanat, she stays with the mother. If it's a child, a male child, if he has not reached the age of Hazanat, still stays with the mother. So there's a couple of factors that go into it. Then the main principle that the courts follow is this one uniform principle of what is in the paramount interest of the child. Whatever is in the paramount interest of the child is what really holds. So if the father does not have a job, he's usually drinking, doesn't really have anything to offer to the child. Same applies to the mother. If she does not really have a job or she cannot look after the son or the daughter, there's a couple of factors to it. But in that case, though, specifically with international conventions, हम किसी इंटरनेशनल कन्वेंशन को अनफॉर्चुनेटली फॉलो नहीं करते, बट चाइल्ड कन्वेंशन में हम जिनीवा कन्वेंशन है उसको हम 100% फॉलो करते हैं. जजेस हैव कोटेड इट अगेन एंड अगेन at the district court level as well as the high court level. So child custody, it does really have application when it comes to the international law, but only that specific piece of law.
Oh, okay. That's very helpful, actually.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I was
No, of
looking at
course.
the The Guardians and Wards Act and Family Courts Act. But like, if you have any other book recommendations, but obviously मैं खुद देख लूंगी. But yeah, and I'll also
Yeah,
look at the
definitely.
Geneva Convention.
If you have the Pakistan law side, I'm sure you'll file something on that,
Yeah, I've
which will
been
give
looking
you
at
actually.
judgments. Yeah, I do have that.
There's a judgment by Justice Iqbal Kalodo, I think it is probably in 2018 or 2019. Do have a look. That also mentions child custody matters, and that has the convention on it.
Thank you so much. That is very helpful.
Thank you.
जी आवाज साहब आप सवाल पूछें.
Yes. So wonderful session by all means. I enjoyed a lot. As far as my question
Thank
is
you.
concerned, my question is about the importance of question. You have emphasized a lot about the importance of question, but my question is that I am a language teacher basically, and I personally feel that in our arena of language learning, our teacher, parents, and even the elders ones in the society are afraid of questions. So how they can be, all these people can be encouraged to face the questions of the students?
Abbas, thank you. I think when you have knowledge as a professor or as a teacher, आपको सवालों से डर नहीं लगता, आपको सवालों से कभी डर नहीं लगेगा. और अगर आपके पास knowledge नहीं भी है, that is completely fine. We're all learning anyway. We should have enough capacity to say, listen, I don't know this. एक काम करते हैं, साथ बैठ के देखते हैं what is the answer to this. So I think a lot of times professors and teachers kind of take it to their ego कि हमें नहीं पता तो हमारी हमारा बुरा नाम होगा students के सामने because we don't know something. I think it has more to do with ego than anything else. So I have my students here, two of them. They know for a fact that a lot of times I did not know things. And I was like, okay, I don't know the answer to this question. How about we sit down together and we look it up? You learn something, I learn something. So I think attitude से बहुत फर्क पड़ता है. If we go in with this attitude कि मुझे सब पता है, मैं उस्ताद हूँ so to say, और मैं जो है वो पढ़ाने आया हूँ. जब आप उस mindset से जाओगे तो then obviously you will struggle. And when I say you, I don't mean you, I mean generally. But when you go in with the mindset कि ठीक है, I'm going there to learn with everyone and we're going to make this fun and all of us are going to walk out of that class today learning something new. If you go in with that mindset, I feel like it's going to make a huge difference for sure.
थैंक यू जी डॉक्टर इरम.
थैंक यू शमाइला. थैंक यू ज़हरैन. आपने बहुत फ्लुएंटली सारी बातें की. मैं बड़ी खुश हूँ कि आप छोटी सी उम्र में इतनी आपकी क्लैरिटी ऑफ थॉट है. तो
मेरे बाल सफेद हो गए, मैं छोटी उम्र नहीं है.
छोटी सी
Thank you.
उम्र हो जाते हैं. नहीं, आप छोटे हैं तो
Yeah,
हम
thank
लोग तो 50 साल की उम्र में आगे में कुछ समझ आना शुरू हुआ है. तो आप माशाल्लाह अभी से ही बहुत सी चीजें समझ गए. मैं ये पूछना चाह रही थी कि हम लोग घर में डिस्कशन करते हैं, मेरे बच्चे, मैं, हम लोग तो वो भी पढ़ते रहते हैं कुछ ना कुछ. तो उस मेरे बेटे का ख्याल ये है कि अमेरिका में ह्यूमन राइट्स की कंडीशंस जो है ना अब बहुत ख़राब हो चुकी हैं. मैं उसको ये कहती हूँ, मेरा पॉइंट ये होता है कि नहीं, अब उनकी अब एक लॉन्ग हिस्ट्री हो गई है, ट्रेडिशन उनकी सेट हो गई हैं, तो इतनी आसान नहीं है ह्यूमन राइट्स वहाँ पे इतनी जल्दी ख़राब होना. तो हम दोनों का इत्तेफाक राय नहीं है इस बात पे. आपकी राय चाहिए.
Dr. Saiba,
आप
thank
चूंकि
you.
अमेरिका में हैं.
हाँ. Listen, I don't think I have the answers to everything in life. I'm just as troubled as everyone else, but I'll try my best. देखिए, ह्यूमन राइट्स इश्यूज कहाँ नहीं है, सही ना. जहाँ इंसान है वहाँ ह्यूमन राइट्स इश्यूज है. जिस तरह हम कहते हैं
बिल्कुल.
जहाँ इंसान है वहाँ बीमारी होगी, वहाँ पे आपको डॉक्टर चाहिए. जहाँ इंसान है वहाँ आपको वकील चाहिए. सो ह्यूमन राइट्स
बिल्कुल.
इश्यूज आई फील लाइक आर एवरीवेयर. Again, I would say there are different capacities as to where, or there are different levels as to where human rights issues कहाँ हैं और कहाँ कम हैं. हर जगह हैं. But the only thing that people cannot take away from you are your thoughts, and you should have the right to voice your thought. If your thought is being voiced without repercussions, then I feel like that is a good enough bargain. US में ये है कि आप बहुत जगहों पे डिबेट कर सकते हैं. Obviously, you need to know your place in time where you're debating. You should know the person you're debating with. अगर आप एक बहुत ही राइटिस्ट आदमी से या बहुत ही लेफ्टिस्ट आदमी से अगर आप डिबेट करोगे जो कि बहुत ही दे डोंट इवन वांट टू क्वेश्चन देयर बिलीफ्स, ऑब्वियसली देन इट्स नो यूज. उसमें तो यू नॉट गोइंग टू गेट एनीथिंग आउट ऑफ इट. बट इफ यू डिबेटिंग, एंड दिस गोज फॉर बोथ पाकिस्तान एंड द यूएस, अगर आप दोनों ममालिक में किसी ऐसे आदमी से डिबेट करें जिसका नजरिया ये है कि ही इज ओपन टू फीडबैक, ही इज ओपन टू डिफरेंट व्यूज, तो फिर तो you will have obviously come out of the other side learning something. So human rights issues are everywhere. But that being said, um, for in our society, in our Pakistani society, we struggle with voicing opinions because a lot of times, if you voice your opinion and it is against the state discourse, you are more likely to be disappeared as compared to doing the same thing here. So you can still voice your opinion. Wahan pe, if you do voice your opinion, you do have repercussions. As sad as that is. तो ह्यूमन राइट्स इश्यूज हर जगह हैं, यहाँ पे भी हैं, यहाँ पे डिफरेंट फॉर्म्स में हैं. यहाँ पे इट्स इन फॉर्म ऑफ रेसिज्म. In Pakistan, it's not really in form of that. But in Pakistan, there's probably in form of sectarian hate, so to say. So hate is everywhere. Rights issues are everywhere. I feel like it would be an irresponsible statement from my side if I say कि यहाँ पे human rights issues नहीं है. यहाँ पे भी हैं, हमारे पास भी हैं, but it is only the 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 volume of violations. I feel like we have more of it. They probably have less of it. But obviously, we have in Pakistan, our population is rather smaller. This is an entire continent here. The population is bigger. A lot of things might get brushed under the rug. Other violations होंगी because there's such a huge population. But हमारे पास सामने आ जाती हैं. And social media these days, everything is now out in the open. अगर कोई चीज mass media पे नहीं है तो वो social media पे है. So in the end, I say to this question, I say there are human rights violations everywhere. It is just whatever comes to the front comes to the front.
Thank you.
थैंक यू
Thank you.
सुरेन। अच्छा, मेरा आपसे सवाल ये है सुरेन, अभी आपने बात की कि मतलब हम 140 नंबर पे है ना जुडिशरी में, इससे भी शायद बुरे हालात है।
138 I think.
हाँ,
हाँ, I think ऐसे कुछ.
हाँ, ऑलमोस्ट इतने हैं। और आपने एक और
जी जी.
बात की कि हमें सोसाइटी में जिनके खिलाफ हम बात नहीं कर सकते ना, तो हमें उससे पता चलता है कि भाई पावर किनके हाथ में है, या मतलब वो किस तरह से चीज़ों को लेके चल रहे हैं। तो मैं ये अब कि मैं पंजाब यूनिवर्सिटी में पढ़ाती हूँ, तो मेरे साथ बहुत सारे यंग स्टूडेंट्स के साथ इंटरेक्शन होता है। तो मैं ना डिसअपॉइंटमेंट बहुत है, और वो यानी किसी निज़ाम को नहीं अब मानना चाहते ना, बिकॉज वो समझते हैं कि किसी, अभी देखें यहाँ पे ना एक सीसीडी, वो एक फोर्स बनाई गई है, वो मुझे लगता है कि अगर उसको डिफाइन करें ना, तो वो इटसेल्फ जो है वो जुडिशरी को ही डेंट डालती है ना, कि भाई आप मावरा अदालत कत्ल कर रहे हैं। अभी मैं एक वो वीडियो देख रही थी, उसमें एक खातून जो है वो बता रही थी कि उनके 3 बेटों को और 2 दामाद जो हैं, मतलब उनके घर से 5 लोग गए हैं। वो जाहिर है वो इस तरह भी यूज हो रही है कि वो जिनके पास पैसा है वो चलाते हैं, और बंदे गायब हो जाते हैं उनके। तो आप इसका क्रेडिट किसको देंगे? मतलब कि हमारी जो ये जुडिशरी सिस्टम है, ये आज तक सही क्यों नहीं हो सका? ये वीक से वीकर और अब वीकेस्ट पॉइंट पे है। तो इसको हम, आप क्या समझते हैं कि हम जो एज अ नेशन है, हम अपने डिसअपॉइंटमेंट को कैसे जो है वो कंट्रोल करें, अपने बच्चों को कैसे बताएं कि भाई शायद चीजें ठीक हो जाएंगी?
Um, I think this is a nuanced question in the sense कि इसके बहुत सारे outlooks हैं. I'm going to try to keep it as specific and accurate to your question. देखिए, judicial dent तो बहुत time से है. It's not today. It's not happened in. I mean, the amendments just made it worse. But judicial dent तो शुरू से. Constitutional amendments were just the icing on the cake. Even before that, since 1947, we after 1980s, I think we stopped producing good judges. We stopped producing good lawyers. And I might get a lot of uh, negative feedback on this कि जी वकील तो अभी भी अच्छे हैं, but हमारे judges भी राणा भगवंत दास साहब के बाद से we haven't produced a good judge in our system. And he also was not allowed to become the Chief Justice of Pakistan because he was not a Muslim. And correct me if I'm wrong, but these things have lasting impacts. Um, so judicial dent to बहुत time से, and the way we can fix this is, and when I say we can fix this, I mean we can fix a lot of the problems in our political setup, including the judiciary. Is I think education starts from home. As you said, कि हम अपने बच्चों को किस तरह समझाएं कि चीजें बेहतर होंगी. It is going to take a very long time for things to improve. But the starting point of improvement, I feel, is going to be along the lines के inculcate principles and values in your student in your children and your students. आप उनको बताएं जी कि ये सही है, ये गलत है. You have to stand up for this thing which is right and this thing which is wrong. Um, मुझे पता है कि मेरी बाउंड्री ये है कि मुझे इस चीज से आगे नहीं जाना. इफ आई एम सेइंग यस टू दिस इज वेयर आई स्टॉप. इससे आगे would be I will be transgressing all the boundaries. So values and principles I feel like being inculcated in a child go a long way. जहाँ पे if that child steps into the judiciary or the parliament, he or she will know कि ठीक है मेरी boundary है, मेरी माँ ने मुझे ये सिखाया, मेरे बाप ने मुझे ये सिखाया, and this is where I have to stop. Now, stopping would either mean stopping, halting oneself from corruption, from taking wrong decisions. I think it starts from home. That being said, it's not just from the home, it is also your peer influence. Your friends have an influence on you. Your friends really, your company rubs off on you. अगर आप बेवकूफ लोगों के साथ उठेंगे बैठेंगे तो आप बेवकूफ ही बनेंगे. अगर आप कामयाब लोगों के साथ या ज़हीन लोगों के साथ उठेंगे बैठेंगे, you will have that same impact on you. So the judicial dent and the way the things will improve is I only have faith from the Gen Z, the newer generation, because the older generation, I think they don't really have anything to offer anymore. The ones in the parliament, the ones in the courts, they don't, they this. मैं कहता हूँ अब आप रिक्वायरमेंट बनाए, अगर किसी को जज बनना है, किसी को पार्लियामेंटेरियन बनना है, उससे पूछें स्नैपचैट पे फिल्टर किस तरह लगता है. अगर वो नहीं लगा सकते, they cannot be a member of the parliament or the jury, because it's just the newer generation is sick of this. It's if you don't even know what AI is and how AI works, how do you really plan on progressing as a country in the field of AI? If I don't know how to build a cell phone, why should I be the minister of IT? I heard some minister of IT the other day say कि Wi-Fi is like a road. अगर रोड पे गाड़ियां बहुत ज्यादा आती हैं तो वाईफाई स्लो हो जाता है. And I was like, okay, you know, if this is how it's going to be, this is how it's going to be. So I would conclude your question by answering, okay, inculcate values and principles in your child and your students where they know exactly what is wrong and what is right, and make sure their company is where their company reflects on them. Zahin logo ke saath wo hang out kare. And then there's not much you can do. That is all you can do. आप नसीब नहीं लिख सकते किसी का. You can only make sure you give them the best. And those people will eventually move on and kind of bring a change in society. Very idealistic, but I hope that is how it works. That answers it.
थैंक यू।
जी जनाब,
Thank you.
कोई और सवाल किसी का? शुमाइला, कोई और सवाल नहीं है? और आज तो
नहीं,
क्वेश्चन के लिए जुरैन ने इनवाइट किया शुरू से कि क्वेश्चन करें.
Yeah, man. I want you guys to ask as many questions. No question is stupid. No answer is stupid. I might give a very stupid answer. You might have a very good question. Please
यस
ask questions. Um, because सवालात से आप सीखोगे and सवालात करने चाहिए. भले किसी भी कोई भी सवाल पूछें, I'm going to try my best to answer it. I don't have the answers to everything as well, but we both of us might learn a thing or two. So please ask as many questions as you want. I have all the time in the world.
अच्छा जोरैन साहब, एक क्वेश्चन मेरे जहन में आ रहा है,
जी
विदाउट
जी.
परमिशन मैंने पूछना शुरू करनी है।
जी जी
नहीं
जी,
सर, आप पूछें.
पूछे अब्बास।
जनरेशन सी से जो काफी सारी जो उम्मीदें हैं ना वो बांधी हैं। मेरी पिछले दिनों एक बंदे से मुलाकात हुई है और मैंने उससे गिला किया है कि जो एफपीएससी के जरिए नए लोग आ रहे हैं, they have very superficial study, they don't have deep rooted meanings of the things. So उसने आगे से जो मुझे जवाब दिया, that was very I felt pathetic that the stuff which we are getting, that all have superficial things. So from where we should get these deep rooted things or deep rooted persons? तो सर ये जो हमारी जेन जी है ये मुताला बिल्कुल नहीं कर रही, तो इसमें से हम कैसे उम्मीदें लगाएं? सर देखिए, जो मुताले की रूट्स होती हैं वो सोसाइटी में बड़ी बहुत डीप होती हैं और उनके अंदर इंड्योरेंस होती है, बर्दाश्त होती है, ये सारी चीजें होती हैं, मामला फहमी होती है। तो ये चीजें तो हमें मिल ही नहीं रही, तो हम कैसे ये एक्सपेक्ट करें कि जेन जी जो है वो आने वाले दिनों में इस मुल्क को कहीं पे ले जाएगी?
देखें, that's a very legitimate concern. 30 years ago, probably 40 years ago, when जब मेरे parents were just coming up into working and they were trying to build a life, they could do a job and rent an apartment as basic. मतलब वो आराम से एक नौकरी कर सकते थे, आराम से नहीं मतलब नौकरी कर सकते थे, एंड दे कुड अफोर्ड रेंटिंग एन अपार्टमेंट, भले एक बेडरूम अपार्टमेंट. They could afford buying, putting some savings together and buying a car. लाख रुपए की गाड़ी मिलती थी, 2 लाख रुपए की गाड़ी मिलती थी. आई एम नॉट सेइंग ब्रांड न्यू गाड़ी, बट खरीद सकते थे पुरानी गाड़ी में. अपार्टमेंट किसी भी एरिया में रेंट कर सकते थे. What I'm trying to get to is the Gen Z cannot think of doing that. मैं पाकिस्तान में एक वर्किंग क्लास वकील होके अपार्टमेंट रेंट करना अफोर्ड नहीं कर सकता. So when you say they have superficial, they have a very superficial outlook towards things, I agree with you. And where does that superficial outlook really stem from? It stems from the fact that they cannot really afford anything. अभी आप आधे से ज्यादा जेन जी से उनकी पॉकेट मनी लें या उनके बाप का पैसा लें या उनके बाप का घर लें या उनकी बाप की गाड़ी लें, they will be on the road. They cannot afford anything. I think that is where the superficial outlook comes from, because they are maybe tired and sick of the fact that they cannot really afford to do anything out of themselves, out of their pockets. And that is where this idealistic mindset comes forward, where they have this very idealistic view of life ke hum ye karenge. That to someone of not their generation might seem very superficial, or it might seem very unrealistic, which is completely fine, which is, and it is very valid कि यार आप बोलोगे कि भाई इस बंदे का तो आउटलुक ही बिल्कुल ही मतलब ये तो अनरियलिस्टिक बात कह रहा है कि मैं इस तरह रेवोल्यूशन लाऊंगा या मैं इस तरह चेंज लाऊंगा सोसाइटी में. But their entire point of view is stemming or is formed by them being inherently frustrated and being inherently sick of the fact that they cannot afford basics. And I think when you understand the fact कि ये बंदा, now that he has, Bob Dylan said, when you have nothing, you have nothing to lose. So my generation right now has nothing, and they have nothing to lose as well. They might have AI, they might have mobile phones, and all of these things obviously will help in bringing about a change rather faster. But these people have nothing to lose right now. There are no job. There are few jobs in the country. मैं उस दिन वर्ल्ड इनइक्वालिटी रिपोर्ट देख रहा था. पाकिस्तान आई थिंक हैज उसकी जो जो इनकम है, द डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ इनकम इज concentrated within 1% of the entire population in Pakistan. That means the remaining 99% are not even having their income distributed evenly. So all of these things, when you look at these numbers, you're like, okay, now they don't have anything. The only thing now they have is to work towards betterment. Now, those ideas might be very unrealistic and very unvalid and very superficial, but there's still this capacity to think about improving things. Now, if you look at the ones who are rather elder, I think they've now, I wouldn't say they've given up, but they have very, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but they have limited exposure because हमारे माँ बाप के टाइम पे इतना इंटरनेट एडवांस नहीं था, इतना एक्सपोजर नहीं था. बट जब नई जनरेशन आई है उसको एक्सपोजर इन द सेंस कि भले वो 30 ममालिक नहीं घूमे हो, बट दे स्टिल हैव एक्सपोजर. They still have, they can look at things in a rather different way, which is, I think, an added value to what our elders have taught us. Our elders gave us, we have the best of both worlds. हमारे पास वैल्यूज भी आई हैं और हमारे पास जो बाहर की दुनिया है जो हमने इंटरनेट पे देखी है, हमने उससे भी बहुत सारी चीजें सीखी हैं. And now a lot of times people say कि people my age say कि यार जो change आएगा, it is going to be very bloody. It is going to be a bloody revolution. And that makes sense. Look at what happened in Bangladesh, right? The students stepped out. And it was so funny that most of the students chose the Chief Justice of Pakistan through a Zoom meeting. It was a Discord meeting. The Chief Justice of Bangladesh chose him through their own Zoom meeting. Things are now changing. And I feel like, although it may be superficial, the idea is right. The execution might be very difficult, but the idea is there. All great things come out of ideas. And I feel like the younger ones now have an idea of how to go about things. पहले हम कहते थे कि सही है, होप है, उम्मीद है कि चीजें बेहतर होंगी. But if you don't have the mechanisms for seeing those things to improve, if there is no mechanism for things to improve, then there will be no improvement. The only thing that Gen Z brings in is it proposes mechanisms towards those change. I hope that somewhat answers it. It was abstract, but I hope it answers it.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
थैंक यू सुरैन, बहुत ही मजा आया. आपने सर का मैसेज है कि सर को असल में ट्रैवल करना है तो उसके लिए प्रिपेयर कर रहे हैं. सुबह उन्होंने अर्ली निकलना है. तो आप इतने क्लैरिटी और स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्डनेस से जो आपने बात की है सर स्पेशली उसका थैंक्स कर रहे हैं कि आप बहुत स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड हैं। उससे मेरा छोटा सा
थैंक
जुड़ा
यू
एक
थैंक यू
सवाल
फॉर
भी
हैविंग
है
मी।
कि ये जो
जी
स्ट्रेट
जी प्लीज।
फॉरवर्डनेस है वो ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन के बाद आई है, या शुरू से ही आप स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड थे, या इतने क्लियर थे अपने आइडियाज में और पॉइंट्स में? तो इंशाल्लाह हम नेक्स्ट भी होपफुली आपसे किसी और टॉपिक पे ज़रूर आपको इनवाइट करेंगे ताकि हम मज़ीद आपसे और सुने। तो मेरे सवाल का भी आप जवाब दे दीजिएगा। वंस अगेन बहुत ही मज़ा आया, थैंक यू वेरी मच।
थैंक यू एंड आंसरिंग योर क्वेश्चन, आई थिंक जब आप बहुत ही बेवकूफ लोगों के साथ नौकरियों में काम करते हैं ना, तो आपको स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड होना पड़ता है अनफॉर्चुनेटली। सो आई थिंक आई वर्क विद इनफ people who did not really have the capacity or the brains to be in the positions that they were, that eventually become straightforward. But my mother has taught me to always stand up for what is right and always stand up for what is supposed to be yours. So I think that's where it comes from.
थैंक यू वेरी मच। आई
Thank you.
इंशाल्लाह हमारी नेक्स्ट भी मुलाकात रहेगी। थैंक यू जुरैन आपके टाइम का, और थैंक यू वेरी मच एवरीवन।
Thank you. Take care. Thank you, everyone. Allah Hafiz.
अल्लाह
Thank
अल्लाह
you. Thank
हाफिज।
you, sir.
Allah Hafiz. Thank you.
मैं चाय भी